Hello, everyone. My name is Ameerah Holliday. I am an associate agent at Serendipity Lit, and I'm here with our author, Tamika Burgess. Um,
Hi.
we are doing books by the numbers today. So today's book by the numbers question is, what is the average age of a protagonist in a middle grade space? And here to kind of talk a little bit about that is our author who just wrote a middle grade novel.
The average age is usually 8 to 12. Um, Sometimes you can
Mhm.
get away with a little older depending on the content, but usually that's the sweet spot, age 8 to 12.
Yes, she's absolutely right about that. So Tamika has a book coming out in January, Sincerely Cicely, and her project is a middle grade project and it focuses on a young girl. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of like your process in developing your character as a middle grade protagonist?
So Sicily's story is loosely based on mine. Growing up, my family's from Panama, so I was always questioned about how am I Black with the Latino culture. So I pulled from my experiences and gave them to Sicily. When I first started writing the book, I wanted to do a picture book, but quickly realized I have way too much that I want to say.
Word
So,
count.
but I knew I still wanted to reach a young audience. So I think just in doing my research for like what grade level I could or age level I could target, I kind of fell into middle grade. So it didn't really start out that way, but ended up working out for the
Yeah,
best.
perfect. Yeah, sounds right. I think that's kind of how a lot of authors end up in the space that they do, just kind of like feeling their voice and finding the story they want to tell and realizing where it falls in the spaces.
Yeah.
And as a fun fact, Tamika's book takes place in San Diego, which is where I'm based. So we have that connection there.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your process and like how long this has been for you? Because I know like from the moment you sell a book and start writing it to the moment it sells is a pretty lengthy process that I don't think people realize. So how long has it been for you?
Uh, a long time. I started, I think I've always wanted to write a book. But when I really started, was 2013. So we're looking at like 10 years here. Um,
Hmm.
and like I said, I started with a picture book. And then in the midst of like going to writers' conferences, taking writing classes, I kind of always just stuck with it. It wasn't consistent. So it did take me probably, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years to get a solid rough draft. And then after that, it was kind of like, well, keep going. You have this thing, you might as well. So
Right.
I hired a content editor who kind of helped me structure the plot and conflict in the story and just to make sure my pacing was good with the story. And then again, I kind of sat with it. And then I think it was 2017 or 18 that I had decided again, do something with this. You have it.
Hmm.
Um, and I hired a freelance proofreader just to get the manuscript as polished as possible. 2019, I started my query process, and that came about just from previously going to different author events and conferences and just taking note of any agents or agencies that I heard of. So when I was ready to start the process, I took out my list and just researched everybody to see what agents were interested in, my subject matter. So I started that in February of 2019, and by April, I signed with Regina. So I was just diligent. Like every Saturday, I had like an Excel sheet where I tracked everything. And every Saturday, I would update it or reach out to more agents. And then, yeah, it paid off like 2 months later.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and then from with Regina, we did rounds of revisions. Being home from quarantine really helped with that. And I had
Perfect
like
timing.
plenty of time to sit at home and just revise, revise, revise. And then I think towards the end of 2020, she was like, I think we're ready. And then by
Mhm.
January, I had, signed with HarperCollins.
Amazing.
So all of that, and then here we are. Like I said, like 10 years later, it's gonna come out 2023. So
Yeah,
like when
the
I tell
process.
people, they're like, wow, 10 years. But I'm like, I wasn't consistent in the beginning. But once I signed with Regina, then we were constantly, working on it. And then
Mhm.
too, with my publisher, we did rounds of revisions too. I think I just did my last revision probably like in August. Is how
Yeah.
far, yeah. So we, revise, 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 revise.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
your process in writing and creating your story was lengthy, but I think that like you had a really quick turnaround process when it comes to like finding an agent and working on it and sending it out. That happened really fast. So it
Yeah.
seems like as soon as you got in it, you were going, going, going.
Exactly. Which I was, because I always hear like horror stories of people like get so many no's, and I did get rejections. But one thing with the rejections that I got was a lot of agents were like, "Your writing is good," and they were honest, and were like, "I just don't know what I could do with this topic." I guess with Black Latina, so which I
Right.
appreciated because I would rather have somebody who's going to champion the story than kind of just whatever about it. So
Yeah.
my no's, my rejections weren't really that painful. And I kind of attribute all of that, like the quickness in the process, to kind of just me making sure on my end that it was polished. And then even doing the revisions with Regina, just going through and taking the time to be diligent instead of just kind of rushing through it just to get through the
Hmm.
process. And then every time, like we did rounds of revisions, and I even at one point I was like, "Are you sick of me?" Just like we could do revisions forever. So, and I appreciated that, because when it got to my editor, of course we still had to do revisions, but it was, I think, in a way better shape than when it originally went to Regina. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's lengthy process, but it pays off in the end.
Yeah, I think that's one
That's
thing that people don't anticipate is that when you get your agent, you do revisions, and then when you get your editor, you do even more revisions. So
Mhm.
you never stop working on your book until it's out in the world. And then even then, I'm sure you probably find something else you need to fix.
Yeah, like when I got my advanced reader copy, I sat down with the pen and little flags, and I'm like, okay, nope, I don't like this because it had been so long since I sat down
Hmm.
with the whole thing. The revisions were just certain pieces, so I hadn't read through like front to back in a while. So I was like, oh, we got to get this right. So thankfully, my editor, she worked with me, and I'm in California, she's in New York, but she would be right like 9 o'clock. I'm emailing, and she'd email right back. So she was diligent with me to get those changes in before deadline. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing
yeah,
to have an editor that connected with you on it and very passionate about the project with you. And I think that's what you want when you're doing a
yes,
project, especially as your first one.
yeah. And then to have, she's been her name is Carolina Ortiz. She's been really great, like held my hand through all of it. And I'm so thankful because I have a 2-book deal with Harper, so I get to work with her
Amazing.
on my next book. So yeah, she's been very hands-on, very helpful. Just realizing as a new author, I don't know anything. So just, very thorough in explaining things to me.
Yeah,
But,
it's
yeah,
a process with every project, and I think that like there's probably a learning curve with every new project you take on. There's a formula, but also you're working with new content, new people all the time. So I'm sure she's willing to be flexible and learn with you on this path.
yeah, yeah. And it's been great. Like even just random questions that I have, I'm like, I don't know. Her and Regina, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And that was something I had to get over too, because at first I used to be like, I don't want to bug them. But now I'm just like, I don't know. Can you just let me shooting
Yeah.
my emails off? So yeah, but
Yeah,
they both have been really great.
that's what we're here for. We're here to answer your questions or at least point you to the right person to ask them to.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. And they both have been like sometimes like, I don't know, let me find out for you though. And, they'll get back to me with the answers.
Yeah.
So been very fortunate to have both of them.
Yeah. They're both amazing.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the challenges that arose in understanding and writing for middle grade? Because I know you said you went from picture book to middle grade. So, what do you think were some of the challenges in that?
Yeah. I think the big because I knew my story because it was, it's loosely based on me. So the only thing I had an issue with was just making sure it was age appropriate. And I mean, and not like wasn't any cussing or anything like
Yeah.
that, but just like in terms of does this sound too adult? There were times like
Hmm.
that where I would ask Regina that, or sometimes she'd point that out to me too. Like, I don't know if a 12 or 11-year-old would say this, so me having to rethink, okay, how would they say this? Um,
Hmm.
and then just for me as a challenge as a writer, I struggle with telling and not showing. So that was a lot. I had to work on that a lot because I think I'm just so academic sometimes, or it's just like, let me give you the information, and it's to sit down and be like, okay, how would this look? So oftentimes when I'm writing things, I'll like find myself like doing the actual motion. So I feel like, okay, I lifted my arm, and so I can
Hmm.
type that out, as opposed to saying like I waved. No, I lifted my arm, so
Yeah.
I'm just paying attention to things that I fall short with. It was eye opening for that. And then, like I said, too, just making sure it was stuff that an 11-year-old would say, just
Mhm.
stuff like, because, it was a new process to me. And I still don't know sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, Cicely sounds so grown, but, I think a lot of kids these days sound grown. So I think it
Yeah, that's true. It's
fits.
kind of hard to find the line, especially when you're seeing so many different kids all the time, and each kid
Hmm.
is different. So
Yeah.
finding the right voice for your character and their age ranges can be tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And then
was.
I,
Yeah.
I know that your character, she has like a big family that she kind of deals with in topics. So how did you kind of figure out how to filter her characters and well, her family dynamic through her and her emotions being 11?
Um, I think it was just kind of like thinking back to me at that age, and then to being around kids that age now, just to see how they process things, like how they respond, what their initial reaction is. Like, in the book, she has an ongoing issue with her grandmother, and so her initial reaction is, I'm not going to talk to her. I'm not going to talk to her. She goes down to dinner and she's like ready with her eye rolling, and then it's later as she goes through her process that she learns, okay, I need to talk to her so we can get this resolved, because it stayed bothering her. So I think a lot, and that comes from like, I didn't learn that till I was an adult. So some of that is drawing from me at that age, and then, things that I've learned growing up. And then too, looking at it like, had I known this back then, I probably would have handled things differently at that age. So yeah, like I said, a lot of Sicily comes from me, and just my experience. And then too, like from what I see, I work at a school, so just being around the kids and seeing how they handle things, I just pull from them.
How old are your kids?
That I work with,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
work with high schoolers, but the school that I work at is K through 12.
Okay.
So I'll sometimes go out with, like with the middle school when they're out during
Mhm.
their lunch, and see, just to see what they're talking about and hear what they're doing, and add that into the book that I'm working on now. And then too, like when I was working with Sicily, I worked at an after school program. So they were a little bit younger too, but still, I was still able to pull certain things from them and incorporate, if not into Cicely, into her friends or her brother. So, yeah. So it
Yeah.
always like I'm always watching and listening. Like, what are they talking about?
That's good.
Yeah,
You kind of had like a little cheat sheet into like what the kids are
exactly.
talking about.
Yeah, and to keep it like current
Hmm.
and relevant. Yeah,
You'd have to start from scratch, which always helps and makes it better.
exactly.
And I know
Yeah,
you pulled a lot from your own experiences too, which I'm sure was helpful.
yeah, yeah. It was a lot. It's a lot easier than what I'm working on now. So I'm like, oh, and it's different because my character now for my second book is a boy.
Hmm.
And then two, I'm on a time crunch. So, right, I don't have all this time that I had before. Like I have a deadline this time around. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Is there anything about the process that you wish you could have told yourself to prepare for it?
Um, I think just how, I don't want to say how long it is, but well, no, not how long it is. Just it comes in waves, right? So sometimes
Yes.
it'll be easy. I won't hear anything from anybody, and then bam, this, and it's after
Mhm.
and it's like, wait a minute, I'm still on your first email, and then
Mhm.
especially like when you get close to printing, it's like going through and checking everything because everybody's reading it now and calling out different things that I have to either approve or fix in some kind of way. So that's kind of that takes a long process. But one thing I wish I would have known more of the process, because like certain things my editor would be like, okay, can you do this? And I'm like, well, what is this? I don't know what this is, and so thankfully she would explain it to me. So yeah, I think I would have liked to just familiarize myself with it because I think I went in thinking, oh, okay, it's with my publisher, we're good. And it was like after 2 years, after I signed with them that the book's finally coming out. So
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that the process from like signing your contract with your publisher to your book coming out can be about 2 years. And that's typically standard for something like this because you work with your editor, kind of getting the book where you need it to go. And there's so many little details that follow. And so it feels and it sounds like a long time in theory, but then you start working on it and those 2 years, they fly by.
yeah, and that's true too, because when I think back to, I'm like, it seems like just yesterday that I signed with her, and then now, look at us now. So,
Yeah. Now
but
you're
I
getting
just
your
I wish that I would have known a little bit more going into
Mhm.
it. Yeah, just for
Yeah.
that expectation, because sometimes I'd be like, oh, I thought we were done. There's more. So yeah,
Yeah. I think in like situations like that, and I don't think anything can ever really truly prepare you. You just got to be ready to ask questions, ask all
yeah,
of the questions. And it sounds like you asked all of them when you had them. You asked Regina or you asked your editor. And like you said, they were willing to give you the answers when they had them or find them for you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I'm excited about your book. Your book was one of the first books I read when I came to Serendipity. So
Oh,
we've been in
nice.
this process kind of together for 2 years.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know you read it. Good. Oh, I like
hmm
that.
Yeah, so I'm excited for you and I'm excited for the world to finally see this book. I know it's been getting some good traction so far and it's getting ready to come out and I'm really excited for you. I think it's going to be so much fun to see the reception of it.
Well, thank you. And that's one thing I'm excited to is just to hear, because I've gotten a lot of reviews and like people have read the arc and posted, but I'm like, I want to know what the kids think. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see, once the kids get their hands on it to see what their reaction is and how they relate
Mhm.
to different things in the story.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it is about the audience and the kids you're writing for, and the age of your
Yeah.
protagonist kind of determines all of that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, our books by the numbers question overall was what is the average age of a protagonist in a middle grade space? And as Tamika answered, the average age is between 8 to 12 years old. There is a little leeway with that, but 8 to 12 is kind of what we like to aim for because, again, your protagonist kind of dictates the audience. So you want to kind of stay in the age range that the audience is going to be in.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Thank you so much, Tamika, for joining us. Thank you all for watching. This has been Books by the Numbers by Serendipity Lit, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.